I have a very special guest today, Dr. Sam Pitroda, a person who really needs no introduction. He's achieved almost anything a person can dream of, from the corporate sector to the political spectrum. And now all he wants to do is launch an audacious program called Redesign the World. It's a global call to action. I'm going to have a conversation with him on what inspired him. Why did he launch this at this age when he's accomplished everything? Today, we have a unique person with us on this dialogue. I think he's one of the foremost thinkers, in my opinion, in the world. And I'm not biased, as you'll get to hear from him. And one thing which always happens is when you see such a charismatic person is, and especially one who's accomplished so much, why continue? You've accomplished so much, why do all this? And then to come up with a book, I mean, this is quite audacious. All he wants to do is redesign the world. That's all, quite simply. So I was digging in and I said, why would he write a book at this time? I think he wrote it very well in the book, in the words of Albert Einstein, which he says, I quote, 100 times every day, I remind myself that my inner and outer life are based on the labors of other men, living and dead, and that I must exert myself in order to give in the same measure as I have received and am still receiving. I can't ask him a question, why write the book? So Sam, take it over. What inspired you? What are you trying to seek out of this? What do you see that is missing in the world which needs to be replenished, changed, or maybe redesigned altogether?
Thank you, Dr. Baba Jain. Really appreciate being with you. Thanks, Bart, for organizing this. I wrote this book mainly because, one, I was locked up at home during Corona crisis for a long period of time. And I thought it'd be good to use this time effectively. At the same time, it gave me an opportunity to review my life. My journey is a journey of this world. My journey is a journey of India. And it's a journey of America. The America that I came to in 1964 was very different from the America today. And same thing is with India, and same thing is with the world. So when I started analyzing my journey, I realized that I was born in 1942 in British Raj in India, in a small little tribal village in Orissa. That was the time world was essentially designed by a group of men led by the US. This design in turn gave birth to UN, World Bank, IMF, NATO, WTO, WHO, GDP, GNP. To me, this design has done pretty well for the world. Longevity has increased, infant mortality has decreased, education has increased, transportation improved, telecom is phenomenally changed. But at the same time, this design has really not solved many of the fundamental problems related to hunger, poverty, inequality, violence. And when I look at this, I also realize that in the last 75 years, lots of things happened. World got decolonized. China has been able to rise to a level no one ever thought would happen in a short span of 30 years. Soviet Union fell apart. Berlin Wall was broken. Technology became pervasive. At the same time, inequality increased. Very few people today control a lot of wealth, and lots of people are very poor. Then world became unipolar after fall of Soviet Union. And 9/11 really changed the American psyche. To me, 9/11 was a response to a unipolar world. America imploded. And then finally came Corona crisis. These events tell me that the design we had 75 years ago doesn't make sense anymore. In technology, hyperconnectivity is playing a very important role in changing our world. Hyperconnectivity is all about not just connection, it's about content, context. It democratizes knowledge, decentralizes implementation, and demonetizes services. To me, hyperconnectivity is at the core of fundamental changes going on in human civilization.
Dr. Pitroda, if I may, let me take you back, as you said, let's go back to the creation of the Bretton Woods institutions and the global governance structures that were created in the aftermath of the Second World War. Why do you think they need changes? What is wrong with them? Do you think that they need to be totally abolished?
Very, very good question. What is wrong with them is it hasn't served the needs of the people at the bottom of the economic pyramid. It has served the needs of the people at the top of the pyramid. We have not been able to lift billions and billions out of poverty. Today we live in an era of surplus, but we still think like we live in an era of scarcity. We can produce anything. The question is, what is that we want to produce? For whom do we want to produce? This idea of consumption has created huge problems related to environment, global warming, mountains of plastic. And I think it is time to say, hey, maybe consumption is not the answer. Maybe conservation and sustainability is the answer.
You know, that is something which actually the United Nations has been talking about, sustainable development.
But everyone
since
talks.
1972.
United Nations hasn't done anything substantial.
So that's what I was coming to. Okay, the United Nations is a convening body. It can convene governments and they can reach an agreement. But then who is responsible for the implementation? The United Nations doesn't have the arms or the wherewithal to implement all those things. So is it, to me, I'm asking you, leadership of the political leaders of the world, or are they business leaders, religious leaders? What leadership is lacking?
I don't think it is just about leadership. It is also about vision. Leadership is definitely a challenge. The kind of leaders we need, like Gandhi, Mandela, Martin Luther King, people who focus on public service and not personal agenda, are very few. Everyone looks at narrow interest. You know, when I look at people going to G7, G20 meetings, they don't go there with global agenda in mind. They go there as a marketing person for their country to sell. They want more investments. They want more arms. No one talks about poverty. No one talks about hunger. No one talks about education, health. I mean, look at the Corona crisis. Not a single global leader has said that during Corona crisis, I am willing to make commitment to reduce my defense budget by 10% to improve my health infrastructure. No one. It's not a rocket science.
No, that apart, you know.
Why do we spend $2 trillion on defense every year when we know that our health infrastructure is broken everywhere? So I think the leadership is one issue, vision, commitment, and clarity is another issue. We need global leaders. We don't need parochial leaders who only worry about their boundaries. Some people have to go beyond boundaries.
No, it strikes me is that what you were saying is that you need proactive, not reactive. And you are being proactive in designing the world, redesigning the world. You are suggesting that. But it seems to me that what you're saying is our leaders don't have that kind of vision of thinking what is best for the future. They are thinking just what is necessary for today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And everybody buys into that. Because today's global conversation is about geopolitical equation. It is about American leadership, Chinese leadership, trade, financial markets, economy, employment, technology. Today's conversation is not about equality. Today's conversation is not about sustainability. Today's conversation is not about eliminating poverty and hunger. Today's conversation is not about creating better global health system. And Corona crisis clearly showed us that we are all interconnected, interwoven, interdependent, and interrelated.
Yeah.
What affects one affects everybody.
Yeah.
Nothing today is local. Everything is global.
Isn't it a
Ideas are
travesty?
global.
No, you're talking about abundance. You said abundance. Isn't it a travesty that today less than 2% of Africa has been vaccinated?
Yes, yes.
And
Absolutely.
we think we are exempt in the West. If that other variant starts spreading there, that will come here to our shores also.
Exactly.
So what needs to be
we are
done?
all interconnected, and there is no such thing as Africa anymore. It is a part of the world. So I can't think like Africa. I have to say it is part of my life. So what happens in Africa affects me sitting in San Francisco or Chicago.
No, I'm looking at it through the lens of your proposal of redesigning the world, which is immaculate, okay? I honestly think that each chapter merits a book of its own. You can elaborate so much, but I know that you try to keep it succinct and digestible to get the conversation going. But in your ideal world, if you had redesigned the world, what would the world today be like?
World today would be focusing on sustainability. So we have for all of the people on the planet.
Now, let me get more specific. Now, the Corona crisis. In this redesigned world, how would we tackle the Corona crisis?
No, Corona crisis is an event.
Yeah.
You don't design future to handle an event. That is where the problem is. Okay. You don't design future to handle an event. It's an event management. Okay, fine. It can be handled by experts saying fix the Corona crisis. But that is not the future. Future is about sustainability, where everyone has clean water, clean air. Okay, we preserve our rivers, forest, animals, birds, bees, ocean. That is one big task of sustainability. Second big task is inclusion. We have to make sure that every human being is treated with respect, dignity, equality. I mean, in 2021, we don't have gender equality.
Yeah.
In most advanced countries, okay? We talk about Black Lives Matter. We talk about, Dalits in India. We talk about Muslims somewhere else. I mean, what is all this? Okay. And that's where, Dr. Baba, you come in because you deal with a lot of religious people. Okay.
Yeah. So what would you want?
People.
In this conversation, what role do you think the world, say, religious, spiritual leaders, all the political leaders and business leaders, what can they do individually and collectively?
I think
or what should they do?
Okay, first of all, individually, they have to change. If they are going to be change agents, they have to change. They have to promote equality. They have to promote sustainability. They have to become change agents. They have to go beyond boundaries. They have to show empathy and not just sympathy. They have to focus on truth, trust, love, equality. They have to really change first. If they don't change, people will know they are fake. And don't underestimate people. They know who is fake and who is not fake.
Very interesting.
We'll have to come as leaders and say, look, I mean inclusion when I say. Okay. I want to focus on sustainability and inclusion. I don't want to treat people differently based on religion, race, color, caste, profession, money. Today we worship only rich people. We print list of 500 richest human beings in the world. We don't have a list of 500 best teachers, 500 best doctors, 500 best social workers.
Yeah. Isn't it a travesty that during this pandemic, the top 1% have multiplied their wealth by trillions and the bottom has gotten even poorer and poorer, that they can't afford basic things?
That is the fundamental problem with the world.
To me, the question is, what you're asking here, people, is that they are really very conveniently doing all those things. They think there's no need to push. You're asking them to be courageous, to deal more out of conviction and be bold. Is that correct?
I agree with you that those who should change have no need to change because they are milking the system.
Yeah.
Why should they change? It's all doing great for them. In fact, they would like to resist some of the ideas that I'm proposing because it is not in their personal interest.
Talk about that. What idea are you proposing which you think they would object to? Let's just get into that frank conversation.
I will tell you. First is redesigning the capitalist system. Okay. Today's capital system has created wealth inequality. So we need to redesign the system which just doesn't look at GDP. It also look at gross environmental product, gross human developmental products, gross happiness or whatever. I don't have all the answers. Okay. But the existing capitalist system doesn't work for everybody. It is a good idea. Free market is good. But the model which says optimize profit has to change because I can't optimize profit by taking all my work from US to China just because it is 10% cheaper. Because then I've left people behind in my neighborhood who don't have a job because job moved to China and I got product 10% cheaper. So I think this whole business of globalization has to be re-examined. I'm not against globalization, but I'm for localization as well. And there is no contradiction. You could be focusing on localization and still be global because there are things to be localized and there are things to be globalized. Today, everything is being globalized because it is cheaper. In a sense, American business said, I don't want to deal with unions. Let unions go to China. Let them deal with labor hassles. Okay, I don't want to produce anything. I will just produce ideas, but it doesn't work that way. Because your people need to be engaged to earn, to be able to buy.
Yeah.
And the entire Western world recognizes today that all of the products went to China looking to optimize profit.
Yeah. As we are coming to the end, the last thing which I want to ask you in this is, there were some courageous individuals who came together in 1945 and designed the world as we have it today. Where do you see such leadership in today's time with that same conviction to redesign the systems which you feel need to be done? Where do you think it will come from?
First, I think we need a new global conversation. Two, we need to use social media to spread this conversation so people begin to think. Situation in 45 was very different because there was World War and world had to be rebuilt. And Europe was in a mess. Japan was in a mess. So whatever Americans came up with under American leadership was acceptable to everybody. Today's crisis is very different. Social media has a different outreach. Young people are searching for solutions. So it will have to come from the bottom and not top down. Last design came from top down. this design will have to come from bottom up.
So your call to action is from the young leaders, the Gen Z and the Gen X and Y and the millennials. You want them to rise call to arms, it seems.
Because it is their world that they need to create. Okay. At 80, I can't do much. Okay. My generation probably messed it up. Okay. But accept that we have messed it up.
Yeah. No,
accept that we were responsible for creating inequality.
I mean, this is very inspiring that even you say 80, to me, you're like a teenager because you are taking the risk and challenge. And I think this is what we would like to promote today, to start a conversation with people like Dr. Petroda and start discussing things that need to be fundamentally changed. This is the first part in a series to be continued.
Thank you, Dr. Bawa. Thank you, Bart.
Thank you.
I think we can have many more detailed discussions and conversations to clarify some of these ideas.
Certainly.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Indeed, we will. Indeed, we will. We need more inspiring, responsible leaders like you. Thank you so much, Sam. That was an invigorating discussion. It certainly has set me thinking. I almost feel that you could develop a book out of every one of those chapters. I think this is where we need to begin an interactive discussion with the people who are like-minded out there. So I encourage you all, go buy this book, read it. It's available on Amazon and other platforms. Redesign the World, a global call to action. Join us on a platform. Let's continue this series of discussions. And Sam, I can assure you, you will be back on this very soon with us, with many, many more people. And let's build on this campaign of redesigning the world. Thank you so much. Thank you.